Guys, before we start, do you have any questions or doubts on the topic we covered, like launching an integration from Workday Studio, reviewing the consolidated report viewer, reviewing the view log file within the studio, and going through the replay of the steps? So how do we do it? I know debugger is not configured or correctly in our environment because of the RDP thing, but I show you how to create toggle breakpoints and how to navigate. Like once you click on debug integration, it will take you step by step on each of the breakpoints. It will stop on each of the breakpoints and you to either move forward or wait. So that's about debugger and launching an integration from Workday Studio. We will be seeing certain assemblies. Mostly both of these are available within our welcome page where we have samples to download for. The first one is talking us about, say, the Workday-In component specifically. So what are the various kind of possibilities we have? Like we have launch parameter services, which we have already seen, but there are certain other things like attributes and maps as well that can be configured on a Workday-In services and can be used on an interface to set up some properties at the beginning of launching an integration. Okay. So this is a particular assembly called as Workday-In Features. So if we'll go on Restore tab, so this one particularly, so I've imported this in our studio environment or in our workspace. So if I will, okay, so we come back to our assembly view. Okay, so the first part of our integration of the sample assembly is defining and using launch parameters. You can use the Workday in transport to define launch parameters. These can be simple type, test, boolean number, data, date time, enumeration type, or reference type to Workday class report field. CRF as we call it. You can specify various options for a launch parameter such as required, display only, do not show, display as password. So these are certain options as available to you in case you are entering any passwords or any particular web services to be called out later on. As if there are any passwords are required for any third party web service call and anything, you can enter them and make them hidden as well, like non-showable as well. And then we have launch parameters by right clicking the Workday in node named launch parameters in the Cloud Explorer view, the select launch integration. That's like when we are launching, but I'll show you what they're talking about. So basically on the in transport by now you should be at least getting a fair idea how many tabs are available. So common and advanced are almost there for each and every component. Each and every component would have a common and advanced tab, but on the basis of the type of component we are using, there can be more components as well, but at least common and advanced would be there for all. So apart from common and advanced, we have two tabs available on Workday in or start here component. Okay. So firstly, I'll talk about common and advanced. So advanced is the one where you can put your integration name. Okay. So say if I put it XYZ integration testing something in here and I deploy this integration to our cloud, it will override the existing name and will give it a new name what we have configured it. Common is nothing but it just like has some common information like the ID of this particular component. So we are saying it launch parameter. I want to say launch parameter Aryan. You can have a customizable name just to display. This does not take any impact on the type of processing it does or the background code written on it. And the other one is route to. Route to is nothing but the flow of the assembly, I would say. Like what is the next component after this particular component that you have selected. So these are the two common and advanced tabs that are generally available for each of the components. And then specifically to work the in transport, we have a launch parameter tab. So launch parameter does what? It creates a window on your integration event. When you try to launch an integration, it creates a window for you, and all these launch parameter which you have configured in here will be presented to you to insert certain values, maybe can have certain default values if you have configured. Otherwise, they would be blank and ask you to or prompt you to enter some value. Okay. And then, okay, so we'll go one by one on each, doing all the types of launch parameters that have been configured. The first one is a text parameter. So this is a simple text type parameter. Okay. And then the default value, what they're doing is workday : and then set value at runtime using CRF is something like if you want to have a dynamic value that is to be calculated based upon I would say a calculated field for report. Like you want to run it for, as we ran the core connectors, if you remember from last effective date or say current date. If you want to in the integration to pick the current date on its own every time it runs and set the default value here. So what you can do is like it will pick up the date from the current effective current moment field and then dynamically calculate and populate this launch parameter. This is what this option does. And then we have added little value. This would be no option selected. And then, okay, yeah. On the type, if you see a small button, these are options available to you. Like we have for, say, prompts of a custom report, if you remember, we can make these launch parameters required, display only, do not show, display as a password. These are the four options available on a text type. So if it is required, you cannot proceed with launching an integration unless until you apply a value to this launch parameter. Display only would be making it non-editable. It will represent the value you have defaulted it with or you are calculating it from CRF. Do not show is like if you do not want this launch parameter somehow. It usually does not get used in the use cases because in custom reports we do have certain default prompts coming to us based upon the type of data source we are using. But for studio integrations, we have only those launch parameters which we need to run our integration. So we generally do not have any do not show. But yes, the option is available. And then the other one is display as a password. Display as a password is also, I would say, one of the launch parameters which we do not generally password any kind of configurations which we do not do on launch parameter. Rather, we do on attributes. So attributes are something that are like the definition or the properties of an integration system. If you remember, for core connectors, we had certain attributes like selecting the version, the type of file to be in that type of organization to be included. We may have cost center, the type of mobile number or addresses or email addresses, like be it a work or home. All these properties that you mentioned was on the attribute level. Similarly, we have an attribute on the integration level for a studio as well, where you can save any kind of properties of it and then it will help you in having those records forever unless until you change it, because on the launch parameters you'll have to give it every time you are running this integration. So this is one. Then the other type of pass parameter they have shown is a password param, and you see display as password has been created in here or chosen in here. And there's a difference when a property is selected or an option is selected, it will have a green tick on the logo, and when there is no selection it will be just a blank logo, and if you hover over it it will say no option selected. And once you over on this, it says set options, display as password and required. So these two options are selected. Display only number parameter. So now they have created or demonstrated a display only number kind of a number parameter. So keep in mind this is showing as a display only. So what I'll do is like maybe launch this integration from UI or from Integration Studio, and this will show up all the parameters turn out to you. Go through one by one and we'll see how they appear on the integration event while launching. Okay, then we have Boolean parameters. So Boolean is nothing but true and false. Date time parameter, date time, they have given a date time value. And then we have enumeration type parameter example of enumeration. They have created enumeration definition, and then reference type is an employee. Click here to select add new employees. I think CRF file name. So this is what we were talking about CRF. Like if you want to pick values from a particular kind of the name of the worker this will help you prompt into, like, it will provide you with a drop down value, and then you will be able to select any particular worker to run the integration for. So this is a
So is it only for employee, or like we can use it for across, like in payroll, can we do a pay group?
right. You can.
You can, okay.
In a period, yes. So it does not get restricted to employee. It's just like that particular field should be available to you, and also the CRF. They have these kind of things like be it a single value, multi-value, or both. Like if you want to run it for multiple employees or multiple pay groups at once, you will use a multi-value. Okay, and if you say go with pay group,
Pay group country, last but one, all the way.
yeah, pay
Okay.
group country, yes, this is pay group country with benefits and pay criteria.
Or try worker pay group, something like that.
Worker for payroll and all workers. We just have to be very like sure about the type of, because there are multiple fields available to you in here. You just need to be the pay group based eligibility criteria application and the reconciliation criteria benefit country for worker pay payroll and pay. This is the one. Returns instances of pay group showing each integration. Okay. So what it will do is, like, if you go to the next, right now it also shows you sample value. So these are the pay groups currently configured in our ZTL tenant. So you can see, okay, this is giving me the right results, and I can pick any of these values while processing or running. You can use this field. So this is it. And then what they're trying in here is to construct a message just to get these launch parameters on a right step. You see parameters, text, and then they are getting all these values into a way to print directly. Like, either you can do it, what you can do it is like create an eval on the eval expressions, or on the eval expressions. What you can do is like create props for each and save the same kind of property that they are doing. And now what they are doing is like just displaying it with these properties. So if it's there, then we have lp.get simple text and the parameter name. Okay, if this is now password is also another simple type of parameter, simple data. It is again lp.get simple data and then the password parameter, and then I think the number. The next one was number. So again, get the data. I think the last one is one of the things that is different because it is a reference type parameter. So it will get a, when you get the employee, you do not just want to have a particular kind of value to be returned on the parameter, but the reference IDs of all the integration IDs of that particular value that you have given. Say, I give the employee as my RN. So on this parameter, what it will return is, it will give me my weight, it will give me, I would say, my reference ID and also my employee ID. So what we are trying to capture is get the reference parameter and then the reference data, and then inside reference parameter, since we are looking for a particular parameter that is employee ID, because we had declared the parameter as employee, that is fine, but then we are trying to look on the employee ID, which it will return. So that is one of the things. And I think the thing I'm talking about is, okay, so that's that. What's showing the right and log that show how you can access all log parameters again. Yes, that's true. To get all these values on a param, all you need to do is like declare parameter or a prop for each of these, and similarly just do this command like lp.get simple data, lp.get reference data, and you'll be able to store that values of these parameters into a certain kind of prop you declare on eval expressions. So any kind of move ahead, or do you want me to present you with how do we use an eval to store this? Because we have done it earlier, but I don't mind showing you a couple of these again.
So yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. You pass this values to a eval, but in this here, we are just constructing a message, which means
Right.
we are just where these values will be stored now. Is it still at the launch parameter level?
No. So they will be stored like as soon as we declare integration, they will be stored definitely initially on the launch parameter level. But what we are doing is like rather than now converting them and storing them or getting the values on a prop, we are just writing it on a message. So what it will do is like when we execute this, the parameter, it will say text parameter, and whatever the value is this on this first launch parameter, that is text param, will be shown on here. This will basically construct a XML kind of a message on the assembly, and on the log step, what they're using is just printing this message.
Right.
So when you go to the server log, you will be able to see the output, like
All
whatever
the
launch
input
parameters. Yeah,
values.
this is just for demo. This is not a real use case, but this is to understand like how we enter and how it is getting inside. So
Mm.
this will show you like if you save this in a property, that on a prop, the prop will hold what value. So you will be able to see this on the server log here.
Okay.
And then we have the right to unlock step to you how you access the launch parameter values using the APIs exposed by the ML expression language alias as LP. LP is there. Press Ctrl O for a quick outline of ML expression and use put message and put message. So these are the launch parameters or things we have been using in the earlier one, and then the next one is the attribute service, and then there is a sequence generated value. But let's do one thing, Workday in features assembly. Let me try to deploy to Workday. Okay, guys. So an interesting thing to note. You see, I just deployed one integration, but how come we have like three integrations deployed or like available in our tenant now? Can anyone help me understand this?
For each of the assemblies?
We have only one assembly.
No, inside the assembly, there are I saw some subdivision.
Right. We have subdivisions, but we also have subdivisions in like, say, if I want to do this processing, this is also subdivision or something like this is also a subdivision. But this does not create so many assemblies for our deployment. What is the main reason we are seeing separate integrations for all of these sub-assemblies being created? And that's something we had discussed when we started discussing Studio.
Is it importing to the CLAR file?
No, it is because we will always get one integration system per Workday start-in feature or start-in or Workday-In feature component that we use. So every time we are going to use a Workday start-in, it will create its own assembly flow, and once it created as an integration system. So instead of doing all the launch parameters or attributes and maps on one start here, just for demo purposes, but they did is like created three different start here's. Okay. And with this, you should understand that's why we have an advanced tab, that integration system name. Okay. So this is the integration system name. So every start in here will have an integration system name of its own, and that's why it will create an integration system, identical, like a unique integration system of its own. Okay. So what we saw was launch parameters. So what we'll do is go in here, go to integration, go into launch schedule, click on OK. So you see, we had certain default values, so those are already coming up. The first one was text param. So if you remember, we had this default value as Workday exclamation, so it is coming up directly to you. Then we have password param. It does not had any kind of value, but say I give if I type anything, you're not able to see. This is what it does. It will behave like a password field and will not display the value you are entering. Then we have display as a number. So again, this one was, I think, set as display only. So are we able to change it and specify? Update to read only attribute is not allowed. Okay. Now it's saying if I'm trying to update this, it's saying update to read only attribute is not allowed. So I will go back to the update to this. It has not been done. Determine value at time. And then specify. Okay, so this should ideally be not used. But I think since I gave this, it started giving me an error. And then the other one is a Boolean value, true or false. So that's how a true or false appear on the launch integration event. It appears as a checkbox. If you tick it, it is true. If you untick it, it is false. Then we have a date time available to use. The date time has been set. Then we have a launch parameter for enumeration, and they have created an enumeration. And then we have a launch parameter for employee. So say the values you see, Logan McNeil is coming to you.
Can I click that enumerate
The enumeration is just like creating a list or using a
list,
list
right?
kind of, yes. So what they have done is like in here they have created a default list of its own example
E1,
of
E2, E3,
enumeration. Right, yes. Even E2, E3, and that's what
and E2 is the default value.
right, default value. Example enumeration has been created. So if you see only these options are available to be selected as a radio button. Okay. So when I think it will not allow pass.
Why enumerator we use? I didn't get.
Like if you want to use it any kind of a list kind of an operation, that's like based upon your use cases it will vary. Like say you do not want a already existing list or anything, but you want a custom field to be available while launching the integration, just to say that this is a test run, this is a prod run, this is a any kind of just to mark. So it depends upon the type of use case, whether you want a list field to be added on your launch parameters and that value to be presented, then you can use this.
Okay, even E2, E3, like any specific field, specific we have to use.
No. So what they have done is like they have created their own enumeration. You can create similarly a different one, right?
Okay.
Yeah. They have created even E2, E3, but it does not always have to be in that way. It's just an example of
Yeah, got it.
So we have run the integration, and since the integration flow was just to get the launch parameters and write it on a server log, here we are. And you see, this is writing on the server log with the message starting from here, params as header and footer. And then we have text, param as Workday exclamation. Then the password I gave, it was not displaying in there, but the value, now you can see that inside the assembly, you can access the value. So whatever I gave is now displayed in here. Then display only number is null, and then Boolean parameter is 1. Date time parameter is the one I presented to you, and enumeration is E2. And now you see the main thing. I gave Logan McLean, or the worker, I think the worker object, I should say. Okay. But now what we are getting is employee ID. And how we are getting this? Because we are using this command in a value or a message filter that lp.get reference data. This is just to get the reference data, but then we're trying to get the reference parameter, like there would be multiple values that would be presented in that employee, and all the integration IDs or reference IDs would be presented to you, and employee ID is one of them. So if I'll go back to the tenant, you have this launch parameter as Logan McLean, right? So this is what I gave, but rather if I go and what are the options that would be available to me. Okay, I'll go and see the view integration IDs. You have this type as employee ID. That's why it is picking the employee ID. So the reference ID integration ID value has been marked in here. So this is the command, and we see reference param. And then I gave that what type of value I need. I want the employee underscore ID from the integration IDs. So it will give you the value for that particular worker. Okay, so it's not giving me the name. It will not give me the object, because object will not make a sense inside the studio program. It has to be some value. So what it is giving me the employee ID. Clear? Okay. So if that's clear, I'll move ahead with attributes and maps. So this is one of the things which we had not configured earlier in any of the demos. So please stay focused on this one. So what we have is attributes and maps, and if you do not have any launch parameters for this particular integration, so all you have is on the services. And the services, we have two things created. One is a map service, and then the other one is a attributes. One is a attribute service, and the other one is a map service. So integration attributes, I will show you how it behaves differently when you create an attribute instead of a launch parameter. So you'll see you have the same text attribute, you have a number attribute, you will have a Boolean attribute. Again, you will have a date attribute, date time attribute, enumeration type attribute, and reference attribute. Now they are still using benefit coverage type just to show you an example. And here they have again created an enumeration. You see now instead of E, they have created an M, M1, M2, M3. So the list values are these. Okay, and these are again the options available. A number attribute is required for launch. Then Boolean is there, date time is there. So this is similar to what we do on the launch parameters, but it is on the attribute level. So what is there on the attribute level? And show you the integration for launch parameters. There would be section for integration attributes. Okay, the integration attributes and Workday. So you do not have any attributes or properties configured in here, but on the launch parameters, you have these values configured. Okay, but if we'll go to the attribute integration, it will be different, which I'll show you in a while. Now coming back to integration maps. Maps are what I think it's similar to, if you remember, we have certain mapping values on CCWs, like say the value of married I want to represent as M, the value of divorce I want to represent as D, maybe male I want to represent as M and female as pen, undisclosed as U. So those are the type of use cases where we have these maps. So if you want to send a particular, if you do not want the workday value to be represented or presented on the output, and you want any kind of a particular value that is a requirement from the vendor, that okay, for this value, give me a code 1, 2, 3. So all those things can be done on integration map. So these are the types of maps that are created, simple type of map. Okay, so if I go in here, it will depend from this simple type, class report type, enumeration type. Enumeration type is again list type. So simple type is just text, maybe text values on the map. Enumeration type, the list value, and then you are using example enumeration for map type. You see, active, inactive, on leave. These are the list values they have created. And then reference type is the phone type. And what is phone type? They have used the CRF, which is like a phone type which is available on Workday, like a work phone, home phone, all those values. I'll show you this while we run the integration or on the integration in the tenant. Okay, so we have almost 7 attributes configured and 3 integration maps configured. Now, since we have already deployed this integration on our Workday, available to you now, going ahead, and if I'll go to this integration event or integration system, it will give you an error. There are integration attributes enabled for this integration system that are marked as required for launch but do not have a value assigned. Please use the related action to configure it. This is similar to, I would say, CCW, or we have not discussed PG integrations, but yes, that is an advanced topic and an advanced type of integration that is available. So on that, we have like, say, the vendor, the payroll country, and the version to be required. For CCW, I think the version is one of the things that is required to be entered as soon as you configure the template. The attribute will say configure the required attribute. So if our attribute has been marked as required, you should always have a value for it. Otherwise, you will not be able to launch the integration. So how do we go to attributes? It's the same thing for any kind of template. This is a studio integration, but even for core connectors, we did the same thing. We went to integration system. Okay, then we have configure integration attribute. So this is the task. Now, the required attribute is the one marked in the options as required. So I will give it the value as 10. Okay, and then Boolean attribute, I will say true. Date time attribute, date attribute, I will give date. Date time attribute, I will have a starting. Okay, enumeration type attribute would be the list we defined. Okay, M1, M2, M3, and then reference attribute would be, I think, the benefit plan they have configured, if we have any. Yeah, so we do have any kind of benefit plan configured. So insurance coverage, this is the type of benefit. Yes. Okay, so you will have to select any of the values from here, and then text attribute, maybe say I will Somehow it refreshed the page. It's fine. Then we have Boolean as let me do it false this time. We did true on the launch parameters one. Would be then enumeration would be say, the last one and 5, and then reference would be the benefit plan, community commuter spending. Okay, so we have almost marked every one of these. Okay, and the launch parameter, one of the important or crucial things is you can restrict. Say you are having a particular kind of username or password for a web service call for a third party vendor. Right now, I'm giving you a real time scenario where you use user ID and passwords on attributes. So you will save it on the attribute level for the web service call for the integration to make. But what you'll do is like say they might have different kind of attributes or different kind of values, username and password for different environments. They can have a testing environment where you will be sending the testing files, and then they can have a live environment. So they will separate these so that they don't get interfere when you're testing or doing the live run. So say when you are doing a development, you'll have to send a file or a web service request to them. So what it will do is like look for the credentials of the testing environment. So how will it know? Say this would have been a kind of an implementation environment. So in this case, it will use Aryan, and say this one it will use check. Okay, and I'll mark this as production. So now when this particular integration say deployed or has been transferred to both production and implementation, if I do not change anything, even then if I run this integration, if in production it is run, this text attribute will take the value of ZaranTech. If it is run in an implementation environment, it will take the value as Aryan. So that's like one of the crucial or most important things we do while creating attributes. We can have attributes different for different environments, and we can save them all at once. Okay. So if I'll go in
So
here
can
now,
I
this
can I consider attributes as a default value?
attributes are like I will say the exact word is properties of the integration.
Okay.
So these are properties. Now, if I'll go here, right, if I'll go here and launch this integration, it will just launch. You see, there are no launch parameters given to you. So in real time, what we do is like launch these integrations. We do not edit the integration every time. So anything which has been saved on this integration attribute is gonna stay unless until you change it. So now this value, this particular value will be picked up every time this integration launches. So if I'll go here, it is completed again. I think they have presented it on a server log. So I'll click OK. I'll go to the server and go to open. So you see now again, the values are printed. A text Aryan because we are into implementation tenant. You see the green badge and implementation preview as a tenant type being set to you. Number attribute we did 10. Boolean I did not tick the checkbox, so it is false. Date and time, it is a values current date and the first of the last of the month. I selected then 5, and then you see there is now a reference value as reference attribute. So it is taking the width of the value with, and then maps. Okay, so we did not get to the maps, but I'll show you. And then there are maps being configured in here. So external values, simple text type. These are the external values, and then we have the internal values, null, because we did not configure anything. So when the
So
attributes
how do you access the attribute in the studio, like props?
yes, you can get it in the props as well. But what you do is like I'll show you. I think they must have done it. For launch parameters, it is lp.get, but for props, it is the attributes, it is intsys, because this is the
Okay.
property of an integration system.
Integration.
Okay, so that's why intsys.get attribute, and then there would be get attribute boolean if the attribute type is boolean. Okay, mostly it is get attribute, but for reference type, like we were getting the reference ID of that particular, I would say, benefit plan, right? Say we were getting WIT. This is why we were getting WIT, because the reference ID for this particular reference. So use this one. Again, the difference. So earlier on the employee, we used employee ID, right? Which was on the table under. So if I'll give this particular ID here, I'll copy this and here instead of vid, I will write this. So it will give me the value. Sorry, I'll go back. Okay. That's not going back to vid and okay. So it was giving you this value. If I'll open the server log, see this particular value, it is getting the vid. So vid is nothing but a Workday ID that is automatically created by Workday in the background. This is just like kind of a ID which is provided to each and every object that you have created in your tenant. So this particular benefit plan would have a Workday ID as this, but since we use vid to be captured, it is giving us this. If we wanted this value particularly, additional benefit coverage type, commuter spending, then we have to mention the type as this benefit underscore coverage underscore type underscore ID. So that's the difference how you are going to get the different values based upon the I would say based on the requirement or use case you have. If you want to process the vid, you can go ahead and use the vid. If you want a particular reference ID that is more meaningful to you, then you go ahead and get the IDs from the table defined on the integration ID. Okay, so that was about getting the attributes. Now about getting the map. So insist now again, since these are properties of the integration, insist dot get dot integration map. Okay, like earlier we have dot get attribute, we have integration map, and then lookup would be getting the value for external value. Then we have simple type map, my internal value. Okay, lookup, and then reverse would be getting the internal value, and I'll show you what is an external value or an internal value. Let me go to the integration maps and attributes. Okay. So what we did is like we saw the configure integration attributes, but for maps we have to do the same thing. We have to go to integration system, but we have to rather go to integration configure integration map. Now you have these maps being created for you. Okay, so the default value you can ignore. Say internal value, a simple text type would be internal value is a run tech, but I want to display it as ZN. ZN value, that is the return type. Now, since they have created a what you call as a list of values to be created, they have representation as true or false, active or inactive. Okay, now you can use all these values on PTO. All or the other things are inactive, so I'll let it be as false, only active as true. And this is happening because we have configured it like this. You have the list in here and the output or the external value type you are using it as a Boolean value. Okay, so the next one is the reference type map. Yeah, so these are the phone types. If you remember, I said that they are using the default values of the phone types available on in Workday. So facts would be say map. You usually map a value for each of the listed values. So say if your integration or values are picking up facts, it will represent the facts. If they are using landline number in the output, you will be using landline. So similarly, you will map each and every value in here on the list. For them will be value would be the default value is this default. Okay, run this integration again. Integration launch parameters. Okay, since it does not have any launch parameters, it will directly take you to the OK screen. Okay, you have the attributes which were declared earlier, right? So even if I launch it again without any launch parameters, it is still having any kind of values that you have set on the attribute level. So usually that's why we say we kind of use attributes in real-time world for any kind of properties you want to select or set for the integration system to use every time, like user ID, password, or web services call. If you remember, you set up the version of the website. So that particular thing can be what we say in a reusable or a maintainable assembly. What we do is like set as a attribute. Okay, so when that set is set as an attribute, every time a newer version has been declared for that pub service, because Workday keeps on deprecating the older versions and releasing a newer version of the web service. That's why we had reached 45.0 for get workers currently. So they start on releasing a better version, and the attributes of the parameters of those web services might differ. So that's how you try to set the version on the attribute level and can be used within that assembly call for a web service dynamically. So instead of every time you want to update to a new version, you will have to edit the integration. What you do is like from the UI itself, just change the attribute of the integration. You do not have to go inside the studio and change anything. So this is basically done when you don't want to set any parameters inside the studio and you want the integration to be easy for maintenance. So all these parameters, you can definitely go ahead and say these are constant things. I will be using it every time and launching the integration. But I can set it by creating a prop on an eval and declare them there. You can declare a date time, you can declare everything on an eval. But this is not maintainable because if you say want to change these attributes, you'll have to go inside that studio assembly and then change this. So rather what we do is like create attributes and save it on the integration UI. So we do not have to go and edit the base code. Okay. So coming back to the map. So I think the values I gave for the simple type was the internal value or the external values on the map here. So the internal values are this and the external values are this. Okay, so since we use the default value, it is giving me the external value as default, and numeration type is 1 and numeration type active. So true is 1. Okay. Then reference type is M. Again, this is giving me an M for mobile, and these are the internal values that we are using. Simple text is null that we have selected. We are getting. Then active is one of the things we are getting, and then the reference type values is again null. So we are getting the relevant reference value in the internal and external values. So that's about. But this is usually valid in cases of, I would say, when you are getting the output. So currently we are not getting any, so you will not be able to foresee how it is coming to that particular value. But can just imagine this is a kind of a gender map. So this is gender map. You have male here, you have female here, you have disclosed here. And the external values you present as MF. And then I think for all of the others, you will declare as U undisclosed as a default value. So when you are going to
yeah. So you say that, sorry to cut you, Rian, little
Yeah.
confusion. So you are saying, so we have an example here, the phone type, right? Fax.
Right.
Let's talk about it. So if I'm using the phone type inside my integration, automatically this map, and if the value coming in the XML is fax, automatically it will print as F. Is that what I understand?
No, not exactly. It will not automatically print. You will have to use this map service. Like
Right. If I configure this,
yes,
as F, so and I use the phone type or in my integration to
right,
print it in, could be a log, could be a
right,
file.
right.
The
So even if
integration
it is
will
a prop, I will
prop
tell you.
inside the prop,
Right, right,
So automatically the F value will come.
right. So you see,
Okay.
this is the reference value for phone. What they have given is like they have declared it manually that okay, the value is coming as handheld. Okay. So what is it doing? Like for the value which is coming as handheld, it will get the reference ID for that particular thing and give you the value.
Okay.
Okay. And if
Okay.
that is not declared in the integration map handheld, it will give you the default value.
Right.
Okay. This would, in ideal case scenario, this statement will repeat to get the reference, get the mapped value. But this value, handheld, will come in from a file or from a report or anything. So
Right.
say it is mail, that will give you mail from the output file. Say you will get the X path, that from the report get the workers report data slash report entry slash report data, and then slash worker slash the gender. That will give you the value as mail dynamically. And in turn, what the prop will do, or this particular write, even if you're writing on a write, this particular statement will do is like get the mapped value. It will take the value as the internal value as mail, and it will print the external value to you. Okay?
Okay. And can you show the mapping? Can you go to the mapping place one more time? Not
Yeah.
here in the studio.
Okay, integration map you're saying?
Yeah, integration map. Okay, here you type, this is name, you type the phone number, the phone type directly. So that is, yeah, click that value.
Yeah, what
Okay,
we have to
got
do is
it.
like
Yeah, got it.
use the
Okay,
same kind of CRF. If I'll
right.
give here say
Gender, yeah. And this is similar to the benefit type that we selected in the integration
right,
attribute. Okay.
right. So if I'll give gender in here, right? Gender associated with
And what is the other value you have? One is CRF, another one is go back
then Workday Web Service. Maybe you would need that kind
worker.
of service. Yes,
We just did the other example, right?
yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
But generally, most of the cases you will be using a CRF name, so that you want the value to be inputted from say a delivered field or a cal field from Workday instance. So this is not
Right.
just, I would say, Workday delivered fields. You can use cal fields as well. Say you can use any kind of cal fields created for you, and you can put them values in here. You see cal field, the name of the cal field, and all the things that you might have created will represent it to you, and you can fetch those values. Okay. And then external value will again have this. So the key thing to note in here is, again, I will emphasize on the code. So if you want to get the external value on the map field, it would be mostly this statement you would be using, because internal value you will be getting in from within the Workday tenant. But this is what in this.get integration map lookup. So it will look up for this particular internal value, and give you the relevant external value. Say like for active, what we had configured. So for active, we have configured yes, so it gave us 1. So that's what it is doing. And this is a reverse statement. Is it giving the reverse lookup? Now it will give you the internal value with regard to external value. This is rarely used because the internal values we will be getting from a data source or any kind of processing we do inside Workday, but we want to send the external value to the worker, to the vendor. So that's what we use, like insist that get integration map lookup. So do remember these kind of, I would say, properties or like syntax particular for declaration or getting these value. One is insist.get attribute, other is insist.integration map lookup, and for anything doing on launch parameters, you have lp.get simple data, lp.get reference data, lp.get enumeration data. Yep. And I think the next one is sequence generator value. So in this sequence generator value, again, we do not have any launch parameters being configured. All we have is a sequence generator service being configured. We already saw this. So what I'm doing is creating a sequence generator thing. And on the right, what it is doing is like lp.get sequenced value. Get sequence value will do what? It will get you the next available sequence of the sequence generator from the Workday tenant. And we are printing this message. So I will go on to the tenant and run this integration. But remember, this is again lp.get sequence value, because it get determined on the launch event. Every time you launch the integration, that sequence value based upon the kind of formatting you have given the sequence, it will change. So if I'll go back to the integrations we had deployed, the last one would be, the first is the sequences. Okay. If I'll go in here, it will ask me to configure a sequence generator, because there's an integration sequence generator service you have enabled. But as discussed earlier, you can declare the service there, but you have to configure the sequence value in here, or the sequence generator in here. Configure sequence value. So this is the format. I will say the and then demo, and then we'll say sequence. This is similar to what we did in core connectors while creating the dynamic file name. We have DD, then we have, I believe, MM. Capital M is for month, right? Month is M. I will give 3 M. That will give you in this, and then we have Y. Then say we have dot CSV. Okay. What is, I think the first So what this does is like increment the value by 1. So this sequence SEQ will always get incremented by 1 on the next run. So I'll give you an example and not increment by 1 but 10. Okay. And we'll see by subsequent integration run how the sequence value gets changed. Okay.
So the SEQ is constant. Always you have to specify SEQ.
SEQ. If you want to get a sequence kind of a counter kind of value. Yes. So now if I'll run this integration, okay. I go ahead, launch the integration. What we are doing is getting it on a message and then presenting a message. So I'll have to again go back and look for the server log. Okay. Going on the server log, you see ZaranTech demo, and we incremented the initial started with 0 and I have incremented it by 10. Now it's giving me the ZaranTech demo and today's date and time 25/2025.csv. Okay. So this is what the value will, and you can use this value on a prop and then maybe later on use it on a store component to give a dynamic file name. Okay.
So if you run it again, it will make 20. It'll go to 20.
That's what I'm going to show you. If I'll relaunch this integration, or maybe from here or anyway you can do. Go to the integration event again. So since I gave the increment to be in numbers of 10, I think it did the relaunch, it should not affect, right? Okay. So since we gave in the increments of 10, now it has gone, the value has gone to 20. And you can always see what the current values will hold and what would be the next value if you go to integration. And you can either go to sequence generator configure, but if you just want to view the sequence generator, you see sequence generator, this is the example of the value that has been presented, and the value used is 20. So the next time it runs, it will increment it by 10 and give it 30. Okay. I hope that's clear. Like you can always view the last sequence value that has been used, and that can help you determine what would be the next sequence value. I think instead of starting a new assembly now, I would rather take any questions you have and then we can start with the next one. I will show you the payroll data. This is one of the use cases. This is again from the sample assembly we have created, like we have available on the Workday welcome page. And we'll go through this assembly, what it is doing, how the different components are being used. But talking about the launch parameter and attribute services, or like exploring the Workday-In features, are you clear with it? Launch parameter, attribute services, as well as sequence generator services. If there are no questions, then I will say
I have one issue with one of my studio.
I'm open to, yeah.
Okay, let me share.
Sharing.
Yeah.
You can share.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I just have this eval, right? And I have this counter property.
Okay.
This is always B1 for all the files. It is not incrementing. Do you see any issues here?
1 second. File name counter and then is equal file.
So this is the prop I'm using. If you have seen this, I can go to the store.
And now 1 minute. It would be okay, show me the store prop
So
name.
this is the prop name. So I think that is also right.
Yes, I think 1 second. What you are doing is using it wrongly on the prop name on this title. Either you can declare that you should be using is @ okay, no. Curly braces in the starting, right? @ file name. So I think this is good file name. Can you go back to the eval again? And how many files is it creating? Is it creating multiple files?
It is creating multiple files, but
the file output, I'll get a fair idea that it is coming. So while this is running, can you go back to the assembly one? Show me the evals. File CNTR or 0. You are declaring it props. Okay, you can go back to the integration event. Let's see what you are getting. 124 files.
See this?
Incrementing it. Can you go back to the assembly one? It's sub route. You are using a sub route and then And the subroute is maybe report data and then paint. Can you go to the splitter one? What is the splitting strategy you are using? Yeah, strategy. Click on strategy.
Stream splitter. I mean, that is all happening correct. Those splitters.
Okay.
Only thing is
Okay,
this file number. This is not incrementing. This is not working. See, this file counter always be 0. See, it is not reassigning to this because it's 0. It's always coming as 1. Understand?
Yeah. Fine.
I mean, I was checking after clue of I have no
Okay,
clue. Then I was checking your own thing. It's the same that we have.
Right. I think for me it is working somehow because I think that's not the right way. Now I get it.
Okay.
Why? I think for me might have been a different thing. Counter we are using and okay is equal to 0. Okay, so what it is doing is like you see after every splitter, it is setting the counter as 0 again and then incrementing.
That
So
makes sense.
you do this, you select this and create on the eval.
Let's take this guy out
Yeah, and create it on the first eval.
here. Yeah,
Right.
maybe that makes sense. Yeah,
Okay.
that makes absolute sense to say.
Maybe for me, why is it working? I might be using a default value or a variable name, which in turn in the background changes when we execute. So it might be certain kind of a global
Right,
variable that is used.
probably.
Yeah.
Let's see. That gives me the idea why it's every time
Because
resetting to
every
0.
time, every time the splitter is again coming back to this eval, it is starting from 0. And from 0, it is
there you go.
adding it to 1.
There you go. Okay, thank you.